The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mind Garden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
It is the final episode of this season of the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we are getting to roll here. A lot of stuff to get to today, including some results from the Spirit Box session we had a couple of weeks ago. And then also something that just recently happened to you like moments ago.
And like literally moments ago, weird things happened to me. Do you want to talk about that first?
Yeah, let's talk about that first.
Okay, so just a little bit of background, and I kind of talked about this a little bit here and there over the past couple of seasons, that I have never had weird things. All right, let me take that back. I have never noticed weird things happening to me in my studio here before the last couple of years. And again, my abilities have also really ramped up over the last few years and kind of leveled up. I keep leveling up to the point where I notice a lot more. Things happen a lot more often to me now. But before a couple of years ago, I didn't really notice anything. I didn't know to notice anything. And then my friend Trey passed away. And weird things had been happening that in and of themselves maybe wouldn't have seemed as odd, but when you put them all together, it really made for quite the picture that I most likely am being visited by Trey and possibly other spirits as well. And weird things have happened. So, for example, after Trey, literally the day that Trey passed, or right around that time, things would fall over in my studio. Weird things. My computer became unplugged for absolutely no reason one day. I have had strange things fall over. Just really weird things that, again, in and of themselves wouldn't be a big deal, except for the fact that when you put them all together in context with the timing of things, or me actually just asking for something to happen and then it will happen, it makes a lot of sense that I'm being visited. So, and Todd, let me say this too, that I have tried to debunk every single thing that has happened in this studio. Right. Every single thing I have tried beyond belief to debunk, I cannot debunk it. Cannot. Things fall over that have absolutely zero reason to fall over. Things move that have no reason to move. I've been banging on walls, stamping my feet, and I'm not a small woman, jumping up and down, doing all this crazy shit, and I can't get it to do it on its own. It just does it at other times. So I am a gun owner, and I have a gun cabinet in my studio, which before was a studio was just a place to store stuff. So I kind of took my gun cabinet and made it into more of a display piece than anything else at this point, so it would fit in with my studio. And on it, and it's metal, and on it I have some pictures of Dave and I over the years, but I also have an ornament, and I'll put a picture up in our group so that everybody can see it. An ornament for a wonderful rescue. They're not really a rescue. They're involved in animal rescue. Bubba's Beds for Shelter Friends. They are a 501c3 nonprofit, and they actually raise money and purchase beds for animals in shelters to get them up off the cold, most of the time concrete floors, and give them something comfortable while they wait to be adopted. And I have worked with them for years, and I purchased this little, those sun catchers that you can buy that have the little suction cups?
Sure.
And you hang it on the suction cup and you suction it to a window or to whatever. I bought a little one last fall at a fundraiser they did, and it's super cute. It's small. It's not that heavy. And I put the suction cup on the gun cabinet, and it stayed there for several weeks, not moving, not having any issues. And then all of a sudden, a couple months after I put it up there, right around the time that I had been communicating or attempting to communicate with Trey, the thing falls off in the middle of the night. Just yet another thing that makes no sense to me whatsoever, because no matter what I do, it won't move otherwise, and just sits there for months at a time. Well, as you and I are sitting here talking today, and I was going to tell you about a trip in my near future to go down to where Trey lived and visit the memorial at the location that he passed 2 years ago. The ornament fell off again. And at first I didn't realize. We were both kind of like, what was that? It literally sounded like something fell. And I'm looking around. I'm like, there's nothing I see. And then all of a sudden I noticed the ornament on the floor. And it was interesting because there are certain things in the studio that I take as signs now that he is visiting, he is near. And that is one of them. And it just kind of fell down. So
interesting. And I heard it. I'm like, what was that?
Oh, this thing has not moved in 4 months. It has not fallen. It has not moved in 4 months. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. The first thing you think is, oh, I want to think that it was him. But of course, the, skeptic in me that will always be in me says, what else could it have been? But alas, really, I can't think of anything else that could have made it move unless some force made it move or fall off or fall down, whatever you want to say. So I don't know. I have no idea. It's been like this for 4 months and has not fallen in 4 months. No reason. The suction cup is good. So I don't know.
Very strange.
Odd.
Yeah, very strange.
Odd. And I was glad that you experienced it with me so that, I'm not losing my mind. But I did have I did have, you remember though, a couple months ago, I actually thought that one of my crystals, my kyanite pieces had moved.
Yeah.
And I hadn't moved it. And so I set up the camera and we saw a lot of orbs in my studio.
Right.
And so I do know that I am visited. And it truly orbs, because you can tell the difference between dust and an energy orb. I know that I'm visited quite often. I do sage. I do cleanse my crystals. And I do set my boundaries in my home and my studio. I have my selenite around my doors and windows in the studio. I do not let negative energy in. But I do say that if you're here and you're a positive energy, that you are welcome to visit. So I know that I am visited, and weird things happen. Sometimes I'll hear sounds that I can't explain. Almost like popping occasionally. Nothing bad, nothing negative at all. Sometimes I just feel like I'm being watched. Nothing negative, not an uncomfortable feeling. But yeah, so who knows? Maybe Trey is visiting and maybe somebody else is visiting. I'm not sure. We'll have to see.
Guess we will.
Isn't that weird? So anyways, Todd, even 5 years ago, I would have thought nothing of these things.
Right.
And now in the past 5-6 years, it's just sort of slowly built up, sometimes a little quicker than others. And but I feel like I understand a little bit more about the universe and the things that happen now. And it's very interesting.
I'm going to go off script today, and I'm going to have you choose. So a couple of weeks ago, I know I mentioned it on the show, went to kind of a woo-woo fair here where I live, and I picked up an Oracle deck. And I've got a few decks, right? But this one I'm very drawn to because it's the Great Lakes Oracle. So it's really based on the Great Lakes and things you would see in the Midwest and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to have you choose. Let's choose 3 cards. Okay.
Okay.
Go 1 to 42, but you do them in succession from lowest to highest. Okay. Give me one at a time. I just want to read these and see what we find out. My question is, if it's okay with you, was someone communicating with you, and could it have been Trey?
Yes. Okay. Let's do it.
All right. So go ahead and give me your first number.
Okay. I'm going to start with 6.
Okay.
I want to do 8.
Okay.
And 26.
All right. So the cards that you pulled out in order are Gales of November.
Okay.
Whitefish Bay, which you can't see it. I'll show it to you, but it's a little island with a lighthouse on it. It kind of reminds me of one that we drove past or rode past on the ferry on the way to Washington Island.
Yes.
So I think there's something to do with that. And then Northern Lights. So the first one was Gales of November, which is a stormy lake. You have Whitefish Bay, and you have Northern Lights.
So what's your interpretation?
So my interpretation is I think that obviously, and this is, I mean, you could read into this 100 different ways, but I think Gales of November really is the part or the time in your life when you found out that Trey had passed away, right? Mm-hmm. It was very, 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 very tumultuous for you.
Oh, yes.
And while it's still not calm, right? There's still some feelings there. I think that things have gotten better. Whitefish Bay, I really feel has something to do. I think it plays into our trip to Washington Island, but more so, I just think it's a beacon for you,
right?
Showing you the way and letting you understand that he's probably not gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Northern Lights. I think your trip will give you some solace. And I think you're going to finally be able to look at this as a beautiful thing in the long run, whether that's your relationship now with him or the fact that he's no longer dealing with the bullshit of life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I'm getting from it. Now, let me look what the book says.
Okay.
All right. So Gales of November, we know that song is from the Edmund Fitzgerald, right? The Gales of November, remember?
Yes.
They symbolize the winds of change in your life. Something in your life has changed, or it may be changing, heading in a new direction. Weather the storm. So, right, Trey, his untimely death.
You're pretty spot on there.
Changed your trajectory in life by a lot.
It did. My thought process, everything. So, Whitefish Bay, this is an interesting one because, honest to God, that reminds me of that little island you passed just as you turned the corner to Washington Island. What's the name of it, too? Because I looked it up because I was fascinated with that island, too. And it reminds me a lot of, it's like, not Pig Island, but something like that.
It's something weird. And the interesting thing about, you had Gales of November, Whitefish Bay. This is interesting because also with that song, the Edmund Fitzgerald, Whitefish Bay, they would have made it if they just put 15 more miles behind her. So, right. So that's kind of tied eerily there.
Right.
Your boat seemed to be off course. A change was needed, and the winds are telling you take refuge here. So again, my interpretation was you followed the direction that was being shown to you.
Yes.
And it helped you understand the situation. Now, Northern Lights, I said, that's kind of you finally getting to the point in your life where you can appreciate where things are right now for you and Trey. Many times in our lives, colors will come and dance, contributing to the painting of our lives. Your life is being painted in the same way. The universe holds a magnitude of possibilities along your journey. Sometimes you can't see the painting when all around you seems so dark. So eventually, this is what you will be experiencing eventually at that point. And I truly believe that your trip to the place where he passed away will lead you to this. It's going to be a painful trip, right? We know that by the gales of November. We know that.
Right.
But
I actually think that's the whole thing is spot on. And it's interesting about the trip because the trip has been something in my mind that I have planned for from almost the first day that I found out of his passing. Like I felt this calling, this need to go there.
Yeah.
Now, I am almost scared to go, but I am actually looking forward to going, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm so hesitant, and yet it's something I have to do. Even if it's not like on that metaphysical level, even just in, regular life-based, I feel like that's something I have to do. Growing up, I was raised Catholic, and that's a whole other episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
But,
no, that's a whole season of the podcast.
That's a whole season of the podcast.
Catholicism,
but
good or no?
Needless to say, it's not quite as strict Catholicism for me anymore. But I always used to wonder why people, especially Catholics, were so about the mourning process and so about, especially in my time, when somebody died in the Catholic religion, especially again in my time, you had 4 sets of calling hours and they went on for hours at a time. And, then the funeral was a huge procession and, you'd all over the place. And so I always kind of wondered, like, why people insisted on doing that much. Whereas almost like in the Jewish religion, you have to be buried within 48 hours in the Jewish religion. No matter where you are, if you're, in Florida and you pass and you have to make it back up to New Jersey, that has to be done within 40. You have to have they're usually sometimes calling hours, sometimes not, depends on how Orthodox you are, but the funeral, everything has to be done within 48 hours. When Dave's mom passed away, we were 5 hours away she was in Florida. Her plot was next to Dave's dad in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. So we are in central New York. It was about a 5.5 hour drive. We literally had to pick up, drive to New Jersey. They had her body up there within 24 hours or whatever. And we were all done in 2 days. But I always have wondered about those kinds of traditions and what's the word? Just the way that you do things.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of understand it a little bit now because I feel like there is a process. It's been a little difficult, maybe not difficult, but it's been different for me because I feel like he's still here.
Right.
And there have been many ways that I feel like he's still here. It's not an end all be all. And I know that now. I understand that. But I do feel like you do need some sort of process. And I feel like this trip next month down there to that spot and that memorial, I do feel like that's like my place of understanding.
Yeah.
Like, that's the place I need to go to move to where I need to be. You know, it is incredibly, whether you think it is or not, even subconsciously, death is still a process. Not only for the people who pass on, but for the living especially. It's a process. Grief is a process.
I see it
Not
as a
saying
location.
that I'll be fine afterwards.
No, but I think it's a physical location for you to visualize unloading some of the pain and mourning and suffering that you've gone through. Leave it there and bring back just what you have now, which is a relationship with him that no longer involves the pain of him passing.
Yes. You know, it's sort of that acceptance of there is more, and we're going to concentrate on that.
Right.
Not the loss. We're going to concentrate on what we do have. So I'm emotional. I'm always emotional when I think about it, and I'll always be emotional. I don't think that this trip will make me not emotional anymore, but I think what it will do is take me to a different level of understanding in this whole process of grief and loss. You know, we all go through it. And I think that's why it's so important to me, too. One of the reasons that we visit cemeteries and we talk to the people who have passed on, because there needs to be some sort of communication, some understanding, some storytelling. They haven't been forgotten. It's just one piece of the puzzle. And that maybe the others in your life have passed as well, but there are still people who appreciate you and who you were and what you brought to the world. So I think it's a process. Death, grief, loss, it's a process. You had your own process, first with your mom, then with your dad, and you're still working through it. We all always work through it, but I think there's different levels of acceptance and understanding. And what may work for me may not work for you or anyone else, but it's a personal journey for everybody. So that's why I think those cards actually made very much sense.
Yeah.
Very much sense to me in that. And I'm glad we did that. And I never would have thought to do it. So thank you. Because I think it's just sort of a confirmation of where I am and where I'm going, where I need to be. You know,
I've just found with these specific cards, I truly connect. Like I said, I have other Oracle cards and some of them have been good for me, but I am so about the Great Lakes. I am so about nature in this part of our country. Nothing, lighthouses alone. I mean,
we've talked about this for years.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just makes sense.
Lighthouses.
It just makes sense for me to connect with these cards. And as soon as those cards came up, I saw a 3-step story unravel there. So that was kind of cool.
And do you know what those numbers were?
No.
Our birthdays were the same month. So mine is the 6th. His was the 8th. And then the 26th was the day that he passed.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So those are the 3 numbers that I chose. And, I will say this as far as that area, my area, that area, because we are about an hour and a half from the Great Lakes. So we ourselves are not far from the Great Lakes here in New York.
Right.
And I spent much, 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 much time on Lake Ontario. And there's nothing like this beauty and peacefulness and the lighthouses and the water and the cleansing. And my time on Canna Island, as brief as it was, I just put it up as one of the pictures I took when we were there. I just put it up as my cover photo on my Facebook page. Was one of the most calming, most serene, like call to nature moments that I've had. It was almost like you're in a different world when you're there. And I think a lot of things come into play for that. I think it's the nature, it's the ocean, it's the atmosphere, it's the feeling, it's the peacefulness. It kind of transcends just your everyday life. and it's just so amazing. And so I think that's just so cool that, we both are drawn to lighthouses. We always have been. I think that's just part of who we are. I don't know that I could ever live without being near some water or the lighthouses, or a place where I could go that I could feel that serene, calm peacefulness that one with nature type of way. And I always think of before we left the island, you hugged a tree. So excuse me, I'll be right back. I have to hug a tree. And we joked about it, but wasn't that really because you felt like you needed to hug a tree? Like you needed that nature, that extra energy from nature. So
it was also my way of thanking the island for giving us such a great experience too. I mean, that sounds, a little quirky and whatever.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't, because what we got to share on that island is something I will never forget. That was amazing. I will never forget it. I remember getting teary-eyed as we're speaking with your mother, but it's something that I will never, ever forget. And by the way, Hog Island is one of the islands near Washington. I know I was like Pig Island, but it's Hog Island. And the other ones are Detroit Island, Rock Island, Plum Island. So those are all the islands kind of around Washington Island.
Yeah, and one of them, literally ironic. You drive by and there's this lighthouse that, like the big chairs that, well, not lifesavers. What do they call them when they watch the water? Not lifesaver. The people who watch the water for people who drown. What do they call those people?
Lifeguards.
Lifeguards. So you've seen these pictures of like these chairs that are way up that the lifeguards sit in to see up over everything.
Yes.
The lighthouse is built kind of like that, where it's on these stilts that stand up. And that card actually has one of those lighthouses with the stilts and all that kind of stuff,
amazing.
With the little buildings around it and stuff.
Where did you get that deck?
It was here.
Metaphysical?
At a metaphysical fair here in Oshkosh a few weeks ago. So
that's beautiful. There are some gorgeous tarot cards out there. I just have the rider, the basic one, and I can do a card at a time and stuff. And I've seen you've changed a lot over the years too in your acceptance of some of this stuff, because you, my dear brother / friend, are someone who has an enormous amount of ability. And I've always felt like that. And I think that it's kind of cool that you are sort of using your abilities, even if it's just for yourself, but using abilities to kind of find new ways of looking at life and checking things out. And I think it's super, super cool. And there are some beautiful decks out there. So if anybody's interested, I think tarot is a really amazing way of looking at things. And these oracle decks are just gorgeous. And that's one of them. Beautiful. Beautiful.
So here I'm going to suggest something that you may not like, and I don't know that our listeners will like. But we have to share the audio that we got last week, or 2 weeks ago, actually, during a spirit session that we tried to reach out to my father. And we did get some evidence. And I'm just wondering if we should, because this is wrapping up our season. This is season 11. It's done after this episode. I'm just wondering if it should be a 2-part fill time between this season and next season. Like we wait, we don't share this time, but we record a couple of podcasts in between and we use that time to talk about the spirit box session.
I think that would be a cool idea, actually. I do like that idea. I think we could devote more time to it.
Yeah.
And talk about some ideas that we were just discussing before we recorded today about maybe some things we could do in the coming episodes. Some changes, some ideas that we have, some different things that we were talking about. So maybe we could throw all that together and really do a great concentrated 1 or 2 episodes on these results, because I think they were pretty cool.
Yeah, we can keep them short and 2 things. Number 1, don't be mad at us for extending it out a couple weeks or whatever. But also
I
it
know.
keeps people interested in that, and hopefully they'll stick around for the next couple of episodes to hear some of the results we have.
Yes. And they were good results too.
Yeah.
They were interesting things. Some puzzling things, but pretty clear. So I would love to do that. I think we should.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
All right.
Well, this one went in a totally different direction than we had planned, and I'm okay with that.
Totally. Yeah, me too. Totally not what we were expecting to talk about today, but I think that would be a good idea. Yeah, I guess we'll see everybody for a bonus episode in between seasons.
Sounds
And
good.
thank you guys. Thank you everyone for all your support and love. And I know that this Spirit Box session has been pretty popular. We've gotten some people commenting that maybe we should do some more of them. So maybe we'll play around with that idea too, and we'll talk about that a little bit more.
The other thing we could do too, I think this would be interesting, for both of us to pull out our decks every once in a while and do some readings for our listeners.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be really fun because, of course, being intuitive, and knowing our listeners. We know our listeners. We know a lot of our listeners. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And I think it would be fun to kind of help them along their journey as well, if we can.
Yep. And if our readings are shit, so be it.
Which, you always, no matter what, you always have a 50-50 chance. So anyways.
All right. Should we do the spiel?
Let's do it.
Find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. Join our group, Stay Weirdos Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for even more fun. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can help with that too. Editing, producing, and consulting is what they do. Like Mind Garden Media on Facebook or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for being weird.
All right. That's going to wrap up season 11. Unbelievable.
3 years. We have been doing this for 3 years. And I love it. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. It's a lot of work we're both busy. We're both trying to find time in our week to do this, but it's something that I feel like we were supposed to do. It's something I feel like a lot of people depend on us for in a lot of ways. And it's just fun to be able to get together and bullshit about, crazy topics or what the world thinks is crazy topics sometimes, and just be who we are. So thank you to everybody for your love and support. Thank you, Todd, for your love and support, and for being my partner in crime when it comes to this show.
Absolutely. You've been very, very emotional today. Because I almost feel like I heard a little bit of a quiver in your voice on that.
A few times. Times. It's just, I don't know. I get like that. I'm an emotional person,
Can I ask a question? Is it your time of the month too?
No, that was a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So I don't know what's going on with me today. I think it's just, I was okay until the damn thing fell off the gun rack.
Right.
Gun cabinet, but yeah, so it's just, I care about a lot of different things. So you know what, it's so funny, not before we go, not to keep you longer, but it's so funny because being as strong an empath as I am, and in my life, and also having those other psychic abilities and not knowing about it most of my life, I've sort of subconsciously put up walls where people will tell me at times, or used to tell me, that I was very cold because I would just subconsciously put up walls so that I couldn't feel a lot of stuff.
Right.
And that's kind of just gone by the wayside in the past handful of years. It's sort of where once I accepted what was going on, I let my walls down a bit and I became a more emotional person. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes that's bad. I'm still learning how to manage it, but I used to be kind of a different person. And that's why I'm sort of the black sheep of my family because I would tell people like it is and I didn't care what they thought. And, and of course, nobody wants to be around me and my family because I don't.
Because that's who you
lie.
are. Right.
I don't lie and I don't coddle, but, I have kind of softened once I, accepted everything that was going on.
You should have been here before the show. She was not coddling me at all. She was just letting me have it. Yep. Oh, my God. It was painful.
God.
It was painful.
I was not. It's only because I love you.
Painful.
Love you so much. Look at that. You used to get mad at me when I told you I loved you.
I'm not
now
listening.
You, just let me.
I'm not listening. Turning my headphones down while you're chatting.
Whatever.
All right. Until next season, we'll see you all soon. We'll have those results of the EVP session or the Spirit Box session that we did a couple of weeks ago on the next episode of the Sandy and Toddcast. Until then, bye.
Bye.